What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Five Pod, episode number 143. I'm your co-host, Kyle Morello, co-host Jake Kopstick, of course, with us. And today we have two special guests joining us on the Big Five Pod, Pete and Tony from Hawk Talk podcast, because we're going to talk some St. Joe stuff in this episode. I don't know if you guys heard, there's a little bit of news last week that we're going to have to discuss. And if it's important enough for us to do it right off the bat, we're pushing Cope's quick hitters down. We're pushing down the rest of the league right now. We're going to talk about this. But guys, thanks for coming on. How you doing?
Doing great, guys. Kyle, Jakes, thanks so much for having us. You guys are doing great work over at the Big Five podcast. Love what you do. So again, looking forward to it.
This is like that episode of Seinfeld where it's Bizarro Jerry. We've got Morelli, we've got Morello. So expect the inverse of every answer Kyle gives.
Hey, listen, that's what we're here for. We're embracing debate. You know what I mean? This is good stuff here. And of course, Cope, I have to ask, how are you two?
I'm good, thank you. Fellas, he usually skips over me whenever we have a guest on. So,
I tend to forget sometimes, but of course he's my guy. I got to know what he's doing, even though I talk to him like every day. But
yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. We'll get into the meat potatoes, Kyle. I think I say I'm good every time. I might as well just pass over me anyway. So
every time that the Broncos, except when the Broncos were losing, that was the only time you weren't good. But I digress. We'll talk about it another time. Obviously, we've invited you both to come on here to talk not just St. Joe's basketball on the court, which we will get into, and they've had, well, an up and down season, I guess is one to describe it. I think that's pretty accurate. But more importantly, last week, we all found out the news that Athletic Director Jill Bodensteiner was leaving Hawk Hill to become the commissioner of the Horizon League. There was a little bit of a 10-minute offset or so between when we actually found out she was leaving and what she was leaving for. So that was a little bit of an interesting time there that I'm sure we'll get into. But just a couple of factual quick. She'll be the 7th ever commissioner of the Horizon League, and her contract starts on April 15th of this year. She's been the vice president and director of athletics at St. Joe's since 2018. Before that, she was at Notre Dame for 20 years. And of course, she is most famous on Hawk Hill for letting go of Phil Martelli after the 2019 season, hiring Billy Lang, and then, of course, when Billy Lang left in September to go coach, be a player development role with the Knicks, hiring Steve Donahue and giving him a contract. Because basketball is, of course, the biggest sport at St. Joe's. So it's been an interesting tenure in her 7 or so years on Hawk Hill, as we all know. Peter, I will start with you. When you found out this news, what was the first thing that crossed your mind?
The first thing that crosses my mind is that leadership is judged more in outcomes than in intention. And I think when you think back to this era, you'll just remember her for one thing and one thing only. She spent the entirety of her tenure trying to clean up a mess. And I think for me, as a St. Joe's fan, rising tides raise all ships. The only ship I want to be on is St. Joe's basketball. And when you unsettle the waters and forget your identity along the way, that's what I'm going to remember her for. I know that's a bleak answer and maybe not what people want to hear, but look, Jill took over the program. She made a really, really significant decision in firing of Phil Martelli alongside of Mark Reed. And I think people will remember that because as much as anyone loved the Billy Lang tenure, this was a monumental decision. And I want to hear Tony's thoughts on this, but that's what I have to say.
It's like Kyle and Jake aren't even here. You're just going to toss it over to me.
I was going to do the same thing. So that's
guys,
fine.
Don't worry. We got all the questions for you. I think, Pete, and you stole my thunder a little bit. Okay, yeah, Jill's gone. My first thought was this is the end of the Mark Reed era because Jill was the last piece of what Mark Reed was. And Mark Reed was the first lay, for those who don't know lay, he was a non-priest president of St. Joseph's University, a non-Jesuit priest. And he kind of wanted to leave his mark on the school, and he left his mark. And that's how I really view it, was his tenure kind of set the goal of, okay, we're going to do it my way. nothing official. He never came out and said that publicly, but you could just feel it, right? He's ultimately the one who makes the decision. He hired Jill. He okayed the firing of Phil Martelli. He had to. He's the president. He's the one who, answers at the end of the day to everyone. And Jill was the last piece of it. And, we see Loyola Chicago, another school he went to, because, we're A10 guys. That was my biggest part, was that it's kind of the final piece of it. And I know we'll go into more details of like, what does this actually mean for the program? But my first initial thought was, now we've truly entered a new era and a true clean slate of what happened over the last 6 to 7 years.
And if I could just add on to that, like, I feel like when you go there, like something was just missing. Pete, like what you brought up, like she spent the whole time cleaning up the mess. Like that's a decision that, like, no matter how much angst among the fan base, and it's like, okay, it's been this many years, we have to move on. Like it felt like something was missing. It felt like that's something that just doesn't go away because of the animosity and how much he meant to the school and the program. Like it just felt like something was missing there. So Tony, when you bring up like the whole clean slate point, like I think it's definitely for the best. And I feel like if somebody were to come in there, I don't know how many of the higher ups they're going to retain, if they're going to bring it. I think this is just time for like a total reset, kind of clean house. Because I keep going back to, it just felt like something was missing. And I tweeted this out a couple of days ago. Like, you go to every other arena, and Fran Dunphy's at the LaSalle games, and Jay Wright is at Villanova games, and Fran Dunphy was at Temple games, even after he was let go as the head coach. Just to have an animosity like that and had to have a strained relationship with such a prominent alum like that, like, again, something just didn't feel right when he went to games. Even as good as it was under Billy, excuse me, let me walk that back a little bit. When there was good times under Billy and they were winning games, like even as good as it was making the semis and making runs and winning games, beating Texas Tech and of sorts, like, it just didn't feel complete. Something just didn't feel like it was full. It didn't feel like something was there. So I think this is the time for a reset totally. But we'll touch on the Martelli thing. But that's my piece on that. So no matter what happened, that was a decision that was not just going to go away like that. And still, here we are talking about that, 6, 7, 8 years later, after she makes that decision to fire Martelli. Here we are. And that's the first thing we bring up when we talk about Jill's tenure, is that hopefully it's time for a clean slate, a total reset. Because again, there's a missing piece and not a lot of good to, or at least, the first thing you associate with that thing is with Jill is bad, and the firing. So time for a new total wipe, total reset in my opinion on that front.
Can I bring up two things real quick? Because you mentioned something interesting. First, I think the clean slate, it's not even a question of where does the basketball program want to go? Of course, the basketball program wants to win. It's where do you want the identity of the school to go? Because it's going to be a new president. I mean, not a new president, but she's been in the role for maybe 3 years, Pete. And then you're going to have a mark on athletics in a time when even UConn can't even fill the stadium, right? So that's something where we're all got to really look back and go, okay, well, St. Joe's isn't, you go to Hagan Arena and it's half empty. It's like, well, some of the biggest programs you go and you look at these photos of Syracuse basketball, you're like, what has happened to just live sports and events? There's like a cultural shift that has totally occurred. And so you're fighting not only this tide of, okay, we've got a disgruntled employee or former employee of the university that we need to make amends with, according to some folks, but you also just have this tide of, do people even watch the sport anymore? Like, we're really entering very dangerous times of college basketball, in my opinion. So that is the going to be number one challenge for whoever steps into the role.
And Kyle, I want to take over here to throw it, Pete and Tony, to you guys on that front, because much has been made about the expensive tickets, about obviously the place being half full. I mean, I think for the first time in my life, I called somebody on my way home. I went to the Joe's Coppin State game over break. Expect it to be empty. Coppin State's a Division II team. They're one of the worst. They're horrible. They're one of the worst teams in Division I. The place is empty. It's dead. Legitimately, I had trouble getting excited for a basketball game and wanting to be there, wanting to cover, because there was nobody there. They were playing a bad team on break, and all those tickets are expensive and whatnot. Tony, to your point with the attendance, Baylor won a national championship. They got a lot of money to build a new arena that they made smaller than the one they previously played in, even after winning a national championship and expecting a boom and expecting people to want to be there. So on that front, whether that's promotions, whether that's the absurd ticket prices that nobody should be paying $40, and they shouldn't be even paying more than that, in my opinion, maybe $25 for any seat at Hagen, for Delaware State, for Coppin State, whoever. So in your guys' opinion, promotion, tickets, any of that stuff to try and garner that, to your point, Tony. Yes, it's tough. And yes, the biggest programs can't draw. And Syracuse has fallen off a cliff. And if we're here to talk about if they shouldn't have left the Big East, we'll be here all night. But what do you guys think? As far as that front, a new person coming in, what do you want them to do, or at least attempt to try to get people in the building as hard as it might be?
Yeah, so if you look at this, it's all about, for me, what I'm looking for is someone who ties culture and identity together, where you walk into the building and you understand what it is the product on the floor represents. And so you need someone who's an excellent communicator, someone who is relatable, understands what people want, someone who's basketball first, I think is a huge priority. They need to understand what it means to be coming from a basketball program, because I guarantee anyone who's listening to this podcast as a St. Joe's fan likely cares a lot about basketball. And basketball draws in the most revenue for the university among any other sport. And it's for a reason. So they need to be committed to basketball. And so it's just, for me, someone who just comes in day one and understands we're a basketball university and we need to prioritize basketball. And that means, like you're saying, Jake, what do you do on game day? Game day is the place to be. And credit Steve Donahue. I think he's done a great job of all right, let's get people engaged and let's get the fans involved and really hype the students up. But it has to be a top-down decision where the university invests in how do we get people into games. And it's not by these huge pricing gouges and trying to squeeze as much money as you can for a family trying to go enjoy seeing Hagen at Coppin State during a Thursday in December or something. You have to really think this through.
Ultimately, this is in my opinion, okay, so I'm the sales guy. That's what I do for a living. You need to go out and we need to do the old cold call. People are going to listen to this and they're going to hate it. They're going to disagree. They're going to go, that's not the job of the coach or the athletic director to do this. Your job is to go into Campion Dining Hall and to go up to every table and say, what are you doing Friday night? We have a game. Because ultimately, that's where all these sports started, the culture of college basketball. Who decided to dress like a hawk and flap their wings for nonstop? That was something that was just, people were sitting around and they thought, let's just do it. It wasn't corporate. It wasn't forced from the top down. To Pete's point, when I say forced from the top down is you got to be humble. These people like to sit in their Ivy towers and tell us, okay, well, if we do this fan experience, if we bring this DJ in, people will come. It's that's not going to move people out of their butts. They can just watch whatever they want on these little portals to hell called our cell phones and not do anything for fun because there's a million other forms of entertainment. Going to college basketball games was born out of the fact that you had a phone down the dorm room hall that everyone had to share, maybe one TV in the lounge. And so what did you have to do on a Friday night? You have to go out there and you have to sell it. You have to go out and you have to convince people to come. And that's where the culture of we all go to the game comes from. So I want to see someone who actually goes, and when we say engage the students, gets out of their office, doesn't type an email to everyone, goes down to where everyone physically is, and sells them on why we should care.
And Kyle, if I promise I will give you your job back, but that leads me to the next thing I want to ask, because the whole thing with Billy was I feel like this guy was. Please correct me if I'm wrong. How many public events was that guy at? I know that Matt Gifford had done the thing at the golf outing where he had talked to him, but that wasn't projected anywhere. He never. In a small, tight-knit community like St. Joe's, he was never a front-facing person that went out and did stuff. And you're exactly right. You need to go out there. How many coaches, even Pat Kelsey at Louisville and Kelvin Sampson when he first got to Houston, and nobody went to games. Who was at campus going to speak in the classrooms and all over the quad and all over campus giving kids high fives, handing out tickets if that's what they had to do to get people in the door. So certainly like whether that's Steve, and he is doing a great job of that. And not to mention Steve also very much more accessible with the media outside of a game day for sure. That leads me into my next question though, fellas, because we'll touch on the basketball point, but now let's get into the athletic director point as well. When it comes to like a basketball background for sure, but so much more changing. Now you need to have Jill had a law background. She was great with what she did with NIL, and St. Joe's is winning awards for that. In an era where there's ever changing in college sports, and it's not just the same cookie cutter, like, oh, this person has a master's doctorate from here, spent this much time in higher education, whether that be a vice president of a school or in the athletic department as well. There's a whole bunch of different attributes I think somebody can bring with an unorthodox background that's not just the typical higher ed stuff with NIL, with law and stuff like that. So when you guys, it might even be yourselves, when you're picturing who is my ideal candidate to fill in for Jill's spot, the backgrounds, Pete, you touched on the regionality. Obviously, I don't think anybody who's not a basketball first person would even consider this job given just what the job entails. What are you looking for? You touched on the marketing, but all that other stuff. It's an unorthodox time. You might have to make an out of the box hire somebody that maybe doesn't have that typical background. What is it you're looking for in the ideal candidate for this job?
Okay, Pete signaling that I have to answer that question. Okay, thank you, Pete. I think the word unorthodox is just doing enough carrying for me. I think you hit it on all of the points, Jake. I don't want the cookie cutter. I don't care if you came from Notre Dame, for example, because we're not Notre Dame. You can try to make us into Notre Dame. It's never going to happen. And I'm not saying Jill tried to do that either. I think it really was a good example of that stuff doesn't matter. What you need is someone who's a little bit of a character, who has a little bit more of a personality. And it's, I don't want to use the word quirky, but you're going to have to use some unorthodox methodology to get people interested in the team. And if that is, you're very engaging, the one thing you can't yell at Phil Martelli for being, and Don DeJulia as well, they are engaging people. I've spoken to both of them in my time on the track and field team when I was at St. Joe's. And then when I was doing some of the coverage stuff for the basketball team, they can talk your ear off. They are charismatic people. And for some reason, charismatic people just go a little bit farther. They get the contracts they want. They are able to recruit the right people that they're looking for. They have that energy about them, that almost like a politician. I don't think Jill had that. I think Jill was someone who was the analytical mind. She's going to do the contract. She's a lawyer. But I think St. Joe's being a small school, not having to have the largest spotlight on it, we kind of thrive with the characters. And so does a LaSalle. So does a Temple. That's what Big Five basketball has always been about, is you have these characters from this one very specific region of America that, we do things a certain way. And so, yeah, that's what I'm kind of looking for. I know it's very vague, but you can give me all the credentials you want. Some people just have the it factor, and you got to hope that the president can see that in the candidate. So
I'll be quick. I'll add to what Tony's saying. When I hear what Tony's describing, he's describing like a mayor. I want a mayor of St. Joe's athletic department. I want the person who comes up to me on campus and can shoot the top breathe with me, right? I want them to be able to come up to me and just have a conversation. And Don did that, right? Don multiple times would come up to me or whoever on campus and literally strike up a conversation with probably a rock, and it would be engaging. I want that. And the second point is a diabolical point, but I kind of want to make it anyway. I think that if you put Billy Lang at Villanova at the same time that he was hired at St. Joe's, or like corresponding to when Kyle Neptune was hired, I think he would have done better at Villanova than he did at St. Joe's because of what you touched on earlier. He was someone who understood the Villanova culture. It's a corporate feel. It's different. It's not the same type of feeling that you get at St. Joe's, like when you go to a St. Joe's basketball game. It's not gritty. It's not talking to the person sitting next to you. It's just a different feel. We joke that it's like going to like a a basketball game where you can also enjoy a nice glass of Cabernet or wine. Like it's like the wine club. And I think Billy Lang understood that culture. He didn't understand the culture where like, oh, I have to plug in. I have to go to Campion and talk to the kid who's getting hawk craps right now and tell him to bring a suite from Soren to go enjoy the basketball game. He didn't get that. And we need someone who does. We in an AD and I think in a coach, but just it's all top down. So it starts with the AD.
Yeah, and I think Steve's done, a pretty decent job of that so far in his first year and getting thrusted into that, a month or two before the season started. But I agree. I mean, it's more of like a mom and pop, kind of organization, kind of feel than it is at Villanova, for example, just based off what you guys were saying. Like it's different. You need that connectivity. You need that FaceTime with your student body to get people to, like you said, Tony, to come to games on a Friday night. And I also think part of that too is stealing from one of my favorite movies. If you build it, they will come. Winning cures all, as they say too. But that's the bottom line. I mean, we can talk about coaching, which we'll get into. We can talk about recruiting and things like that. And NIL, which again, Jill did very well in. But you got to be able to build a community. And I think that's what St. Joe's had. And I think they've lost that a little bit over the years. So something to rebuild once again. But speaking of coaching, as I was just talking about with Steve Donahue, obviously he signed a multi-year extension agreement, amendment to his, assistant coach contract, whatever you want to call it, to become the head coach after Billy Lang left. What do you guys think happens with Steve Donahue in your eyes? Is he sticking it out for, I don't know exactly how many years was on that contract. Is he sticking out for the entirety of it? Do you think that they'll make a change after this year? Obviously, there's still some equation left to that because there's still 3 weeks left in the season, including the conference tournament. So maybe, winning will help a little bit. But the way you see it right now, Tony, we'll start with you. Where do you see this going with the relationship with Steve Donahue?
Yeah. I just want to firstly say that Steve agreed to come on our show week one of being on the new job. So I got to give Steve credit. We never had that in the old regime. I don't think we ever sniffed a chance to getting Coach Lang on the call. But yes, Coach Donahue agreed immediately. So he gets credit for that for sure. But in terms of like, what is the average? So I have no insider information, right? You'd have to go to Matt Gifford or Riley Frame. They're on the ground. They hear stuff way more than we do. But looking at it from a fan standpoint, hearing what the fans have to say, and just seeing it from my own personal eyes, Steve has clearly bought the right to coach this team for another year. There's no doubt about that, in my mind, at least. He's done a lot with considering the sentiment at the end of November of this year, even given all the turmoil that happened back in September and October. People were still like, oh, maybe this is just a 1-year deal. And the team has turned around. Now we've slid the last 2 games. If we had lost just the one and we bounced back against Fordham, but losing to Fordham, it's like, oh, it's just, that's how the season is. And that's how it is a lot of the times. It's like you go on these 2-3 game skids and you're like, okay, well, maybe we do need to start looking for a new coach. You're the short-term thinking in your mind starts to kick in. But in reality, there's been no major blowout losses on the road or in the A10. There's been losses, but I can't say that since the winning streak that there's been anything of concern in terms of coaching. The players just haven't played well. I think Donahue has bought the right for another year. I think a new AD won't get rid of someone in a year. Just like Jill, she didn't get rid of Coach Martelli after a year or two. I think that's where it's going to be. So I think we have all of next year to figure out where we want to go. And truly, if we're going to go with a new direction, new coach with a new AD, we'll find out in the summer of 27.
I'll hop into that. I think Donahue, he's earned another year because the players have bought in. You can see it on the way they play. They're playing hard. The defense looks great. Probably mostly justice when it comes to the interior, but like the guys are playing hard. And the thing is they have BJ Ranson, the kid who just won the Baltimore Catholic League Player of the Year, coming in next year as well. And so I wonder how much of this will be about, and it's always like this, right? It's who's coming back, right? When it comes to coaching. I think that would be part of the conversation probably if the school is thinking this through at like a big picture standpoint, is if we bring in a new AD, what's that mean for Steve? What's that mean for NIL? And the pieces fall into play with like who's leaving. And if they have wind of who's leaving, that they may also change the picture for Steve as well. It may not be up to him.
And it's critical for Steve to show he could bring players in through the portal, because that's something Coach Lang never really truly did. It was mainly recruits. That's what we recruit these guys. They would develop here. And that was a majority of the talent. If you look at like Eric Reynolds, for example, or Fleming, we need to show that we can bring people in on the transfer portal, because that's going to change relatively soon too, because you already have members of Congress talking about how do we limit the transfer portal and all these things. So expect that landscape to change soon too. So it's like, well, for now, this is what we're looking at. Can you strike while the iron's hot, bring in some talent that otherwise we didn't have before, because we were trying to do everything homegrown, the old school style in a time when George Mason was retooling with new players every other year. So.
Yeah. And
Kyle, let me touch on that just real quick and then I'll kick it back to you. Like, I kind of see both sides with it here. Sorry,
it's fine.
My apologies, brother. I see both sides here because, like, I saw West Pine Bills on Twitter make a good point. That was like, you part of the where he said like don't rush into what you guys are saying. Don't almost make like a Billy type hire and rush into it quick. You can give yourself a year. If there's a buyout for Donahue, it's probably not much. So if that's the case, if you want to move on, you can. But if Jill's last day is in the middle of April, I don't think that's a good idea at all for somebody new to come in and that late decide to pick somebody up because there won't be a candidate available. And I think at the same time, Steve is the perfect guy to almost be a bridge between if you're not going to keep him long-term, he's the perfect bridge. Local guy, been doing it a while. And it's quite frankly, I mean, last year his team at Penn was young and like didn't really have any talent. It just wasn't that good. Why are they winning? I think he's a good coach. He just has better players. If you give him the money, the platform of St. Joe's in the A10, I think he can actually put a good roster together. We'll see what they can do with NIL because he's new to it. His general manager, Joe Mihalik, fairly new to it as well. It's not something that Joe had to deal with at Penn as he still learns. So I kind of see both sides. Is Steve the perfect bridge? Yes. But at the same time, like if the AD were to make a change after a year, like I think that's also part of the allure as well, is that, hey, a year into it, you can make your you can make your stamp on your job. Now, you hope that doesn't bring another Billy situation to Hawk Hill, but I kind of see both sides. A little late to be making it. If you want to make your impression and your stamp on the job right away, I guess you have that opportunity because you're not paying. This isn't Jerome Tang where you got to owe him $19 million. I'm sure you pay very, very minimal buyout on the case of Steve. So I see both sides, but certainly to your point, Tony, he's earned that right. A month and a half ago, I would have said something different, but the way they've responded and not just rolled over makes me think that, hey, there's a shot, there's money. Maybe they can keep some of these guys. And again, his team at Penn didn't really, they just weren't good. They didn't have that much talent. He looks like a better coach and he looks better. Not to take anything away because I think he's a terrific basketball coach. We'll see what he can do with another year. If they can keep Bino on staff and in turn they can keep Bino Ranson Jr., that's great. We'll see what happens. I think it's a little late, I guess, in the process just with Jill, but I think I kept saying all offseason, I'll believe it when I see it when Steve's on the sideline for year two. If there's a minimal buyout or no buyout, we'll see. I think we're at that point just with the date, but I can see both sides. Just again, a sticking point is you can take this job and make your hire, your impression right away with a very small, if maybe there's no buyout on there to where you're not squeezing money out of your very rich alums right away. Go ahead, Kyle. My apologies.
No, it's okay. I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, all right, we will move on now. Because while we could talk about, the new AD all day and everything, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We'd love to talk to you guys again at some point when that bridge does get crossed and a new person's set in place. But we have some basketball to talk about too before we let you guys get out of here. St. Joe's, as you mentioned, Tony, now coming off back-to-back losses against Fordham, at George Mason as well, in the last week or so here, coming off a streak where they had won, and I'm blanking on the exact number right now, but I believe it was 7 of 8, 8 of 9. It was quite a stretch for St. Joe's, and 7 of 8, yeah. And now dropping 2, especially the Fordham loss hurts. I mean, that's a team I think you should beat, especially on your home floor. So it's a tough stretch, but now they've got St. Bonaventure on the day that this is releasing on Wednesday on the road, which is obviously a tough place to play, and then home against Loyola Chicago on Saturday, and then next Wednesday, the return trip for George Mason, which should be a very good game and a very close game as well. George Mason's been struggling a little bit as of late as well. They've lost 3 of 4, the one win being against St. Joe's. So, Pete, we'll start with you. How do you assess this team right now, sitting here on the recording this on February 17th, just after Valentine's Day, where they had that rough start to the season, especially post Big 5 Classic when Deuce Jones was dismissed. They lost to Coastal Carolina. Things were not looking good to start a conference play, 0-2, and then winning 7 of 8, now losing their last 2, albeit one to a good but now struggling George Mason team, and then a team in Fordham at Hagen that they should have beat. How do you evaluate this team right now heading, the last couple of weeks before conference play?
New year, new coach, same story. It's all about the Hawk Hill guards. Austin Williford's been awesome of late. I think he's a great freshman, and if Steve Donahue's smart, he'll continue playing him and Myers more as long as Myers comes back healthy. And hopefully we'll see, and I love the guy, but hopefully we'll see less and less minutes from Finkley. He's been tough down the stretch, especially in those crucial moments in the Fordham game, just being lackadaisical with the ball. And I think you need to, it's tough, but you have to discipline guys. You don't have ball security, you're on the bench. And I think that's what I would like to see in this last stretch here. I want to see execution, and execution starts with securing the ball. You turn over the ball, you're not going to win the game, and you're not going to get good shots either, because we saw the Hawks really struggle late against Fordham in that second half. I think that comes from the fact that we weren't being decisive with getting good shots on the inside of the bat, close to the basket, where this team's gotten much better, where that development came from was the fact that they stopped shooting crazy shots from the perimeter, and they were like, oh, we get the ball downhill, and that opens up everything. So that's what I want to see. I want to see more get downhill and be more disciplined.
First, the Fordham game was just like the classic. We put our heart out at George Mason, and then we lay an egg the following week. Terrible beat, by the way, on the George Mason game. It was 6.5, and we're fouling with 4 seconds left, down 6 points. We're going to come back, and a lot of people got screwed. And then I just want to make one point, and then I'll actually talk about how I view the team. The Finkley stuff at the end of the Fordham game, it got so bad. People are wondering, it's is this guy, does he have action on himself? I had people text me, he's check his Polymarket account. I don't think the Hawks are on Polymarket, but yeah, that one was pretty bad too, Pete. I'll have to say. I think this is just the natural ebb and flow of a 500 team, right? St. Joe's is a 500 team, and we're not going to win every conference game. We're entering that back half of the schedule where you're going to reface a lot of their double-sided opponents, right? We don't play St. Louis twice. I think we only play them once. But the Bonnies, you play twice. George Mason, you play twice. So it's going to be interesting because that's always the indication of were you better than that team or not? If we beat Bonaventure on the road, which is something that we never ever do, it's a team that we historically lose to a lot, unlike Dayton for some reason. Dayton, historically, we actually do okay against. For me, that's what I'm looking at is a good team beats teams twice. And so if we're able to walk away from Bonaventure with a win and gear up and split the series with Mason, then it's going to be confident for the team. Keys to the game, I'm not really too sure about. I can let Pete talk about that. But for me, I think the 3-point shooting is still a problem because we're by far the worst in the Atlantic 10. And especially when you go on the road and you're cold, and we've learned this lesson for the last 7 years, that's just not the way that winning teams play. You want the higher, I want the higher percentage shots. I don't really want to see 3-point shooting from a team that, okay, in the NBA, analytically, it makes sense. But in college basketball, even with the kids changing the way they play towards 3-point shooting, they're just not going to be as consistent. They're not NBA players. You got to get close to the cup. And there's a lot of great plays. Some of the most memorable plays of the St. Joe's teams there's a lot of great off-ball motion and some easy dunks, and that's what I love to see. And you get that a lot with Glover, and I do like seeing it in Haskins and Simpson. So to Pete's point, it does come down to guard play and finding the right player and knowing how to move without the ball in your hands is like critical. So,
well, one point to add. Sorry, we actually, I don't know how we didn't mention this yet. We lost probably a third of our production and score more than that with Deuce Jones, right? And then went on a 7, or we won 7 out of 8 after that, right? No, it's really early on in the season. But anyway, I just want to credit Donahue because we lost Deuce Jones, right? I don't know how we haven't talked about that. We lost Deuce Jones and yet have had the season that we've had. Feel like that's an important piece that we haven't just talked about. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, 100%. I feel like they're more of a team that way. I mean, he can be kind of like a stopper, a tunnel vision guy a little bit. I mean, hey, when he gets to the free throw line the way he does and he hits a shot against Temple and stuff like that, you live with it at times. But they're playing like more of a team. Derek Simpson's more free. There's nobody he has to worry about, another mouth to feed there. Like he can kind of be that guy. Problem is the last couple of games, everybody's, just taking him away and absolutely doubling the hell out of him. And he's got to throw it to Justice. And now it's really on Justice to play 4-on-3. I think he's done a pretty good job of that. But I'm too bad. Look, the rest is coming at the right time for them. They had 2 really rough second halves, not only against Mason, but against Fordham as well. I mean, for them to score the amount of points they did in the first half, shoot that well, make 9 threes, completely carved up the zone, Tony, to your point. How many times they get the ball in the middle of the floor inside the 3-point line? I mean, just the first couple possessions, Haskins dunk. They get layups. They get putbacks off crashing. It was a very good first half for them against Fordham. The physicality bothered them at the end. And they took half of their field goal attempts were threes in that second half. There's too many quick ones. If you shoot a 3 off an offensive rebound, people say that's the best time to shoot it. I guess you can live with that to a certain extent. But when you get the ball across half court and there's only 1 or 2 passes and that's your first shot, that's not the best shot. That's far from the best shot for this team. And again, to the break coming at a good time, they had to play Mason, who's a meat grinder and who played a very, very tough game. Glover did not score in the second half. They took away his catches. He had a couple, I guess, relatively open ones, but the Tony Skinn team did what a Tony Skinn team did. They grinded. They grinded St. Joe's down. They played him very, very tough in the second half. That one, I think you can excuse a little bit on the road. There was a lot of people there. I was there for the homecoming game. There was a lot of people there. Tough place, tough team to have to play. The Fordham one, though, they kind of gave that one away a little bit. You have to tip your cap to Fordham with the way they played. They hit some big shots, but too many rush threes, too many bad shots. And then, Pete, to your Finkley point, I mean, the turnover he had underneath the basket and then totally chicken wing. And he didn't even try to hide it. I mean, he totally cleared the guy out on the offensive foul. He had 2 really, really bad turnovers there. The threes have been a theme all year. I think ever since Deuce left, it's been kind of like a better thing. I don't think they're taking as many. There's still times where it's frustrating where they are taking some quick ones, but they just seem to be getting away from the last 2 games. A little bit of the, Mason, the physicality bothered them. It bothered them the second half and Fordham a little bit. I think they're just getting away from the discipline, not taking as many bad threes. The point A to point B mentality they were talking about, not being fazed by the next play, nothing like the Coastal loss or the Davidson loss. Like, I think the fatigue of the season just kind of got away from them a little bit in those 2 second halves. So it's a good reset point. Tony, you bring up a good point. They're going to start playing teams a second time, but they're going to get Bonaventure. They're going to get Loyola. They're going to get 2 of the worst teams in the league here. And after they get their breather, 8 days between last Tuesday and tomorrow when they play, they're still in a double bye spot. 2 very winnable games to get the ball rolling on the stretch run here. I like what I've seen from them. I'm going to blame the last 2 second halves on just the grind and the physical fatigue of the season. I still think that top 4 is very, very much in play. That Mason game, we'll see what happens with them now. They've got a second win and they get them at home. But 2 winnable games up here to get the ball rolling. We'll see what happens. I'll be there Saturday against Loyola. They should have no problem with them. I don't think that was a fluke that they just made everything. I think that was Loyola's not very good. They're injury prone. St. Joe's was playing hot. I still think they'll play very well and beat them Saturday. I'll knock on wood that I don't jinx that, but I'm going to blame the last 2 second halves on just the grind of a season. I mean, you play Mason Saturday afternoon and come home and you play Tuesday. I mean, it's not like a Saturday, Monday split here, but still, I think a tough turnaround in just the grind of the season. So I will blame it on that and think that they'll be rested, pick themselves up a little bit. Hopefully, 2 wins here to get the ball rolling. And shocking. 2 months ago, I'd say you're out of your goddamn mind if you thought they'd get a top 4 spot. And here they are. I rest my case, Kyle.
It's a grind of a league, Kyle. I'm going to just interrupt because for those who didn't see, the Rhode Island beat St. Louis. So the A10 is just down the toilet. So.
Never ceases to amaze.
It does this every year. Like it does this every single year. You wonder why it's a 0 bid league. It does. I'm watching a GW right now. Is neck and neck with VCU right now. If GW wins tonight, they're going to tank VCU's that large. It does this every single year. It does it every year.
It never, ever ceases to amaze. But that's why it's one of the most exciting conferences in college basketball. Every single year, year in, year out, something crazy happens in this conference. But it's fun to see. Guys, thank you so much for coming on and talking St. Joe's with us. Any final thoughts on the Hawks before we guys get you out of here?
I guess my final thoughts are this program is bigger than any one individual, bigger than Jill, bigger than Phil. The Hawk will never die. And, it's a great day to be a Hawk every day. So I'm excited to see who the next AD is. And thanks for having us on, guys.
Okay, I guess I get a final thought too. Sorry. Usually Pete just wraps it up for me, does all the thinking. No, my final thought is I think it goes back to the original point of I think people are distracted. They've got a lot of things that can entertain them. And we as fans of college basketball need to do everything in our power to make it an interesting thing to do. So that means if you like to go to games and you have 2 friends, invite another 2 friends. We literally have to evangelize the sport to other people. And if St. Joe's loses this week, I think I'm going to give them up for Lent. So that's going to be my final outlook. So happy Ash Wednesday, everyone.
That's great. That's great. Oh, guys, thank you so much for coming on. We really, really appreciate it, Pete and Tony. Make sure you check out their stuff at the Hawk Talk podcast. That's like a mouthful trying to say those words individually sometimes together. But obviously, great stuff covering St. Joe's and the ins and outs of their team, their season, and obviously much more going on, with the AD search behind the scenes as well. So thank you guys for coming on, talking St. Joe's with us. We very much appreciate it. And hopefully to be talking soon, especially when an AD decision gets made sometime in April, I'm assuming.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Tony and Pete from Hawk Talk Podcast. If I slow it down, I can actually say it right, or at least just say it clearly. Cope, a lot of fun talking to them. I mean, obviously a lot going on with the St. Joe's program, not just on the basketball court, and we'll see what happens with the AD search, but very, very informative from 2 people who dedicate all of their time in, this space to talking about St. Joe's basketball.
Yeah, for sure, man. Anytime there's guys like that, diehard St. Joe's fans, it's big time. That's what makes college basketball and like the A10 and this scene great besides Villanova. You got diehards like that tuned in, doing their thing on Hawk Talk. So yeah, great to have them on. And again, Kyle, 2 passionate guys doing their thing. That's what makes college hoops fandom great. So good to talk to them. Maybe we'll have to have them on again once an official hire is made, and then we can discuss that.
Absolutely. Here, spaces or both. We'll see. Definitely going to talk to them again for sure. All right. As I mentioned toward the top, we pushed everything else down so we could talk St. Joe's and the AD and whatnot. So now we're going to go to Cope's quick hitters, although Cope's only 1 quick hitter for you today. So grab that ball, run that break, and then after that, we'll do a quick little zoom out, quick overview of the Big Five before we get you out of here so we don't take up too much the rest of your guys' time. But Cope?
Hey, just one. Okay, just one. I kind of called this a couple months ago, but Kyle, the Big Five's going international, baby. We're going overseas. Villanova men's and women's basketball is headed overseas for a doubleheader with Notre Dame men's and women's basketball. Kyle, in Rome. We're going to Italy.
That's right.
We're going to Italy. Yeah, so they're going to play the first game on Sunday, November the 1st. They got special clearance from the NCAA to do this, get a one-day head start on everybody who's going to start on Monday, November the 2nd. So the Pope, obviously, Kyle, not sure what his involvement is going to be here, but he's a Big Five fan. He's bringing the Big Five overseas. Hopefully he can attend this game. Obviously, you have Notre Dame, the largest, Catholic alumni base in the country. You have Villanova, where he went to school. I'm sure that had something to do with it. But what a cool little thing here, Kyle. Get a one-day head start, national TV. It's going to be on a football Sunday, so you'll have this game be televised in the morning because of the time difference. Villanova men versus Notre Dame men. Then you'll have the women's game follow that. It'll lead into an NFL Sunday. So pretty cool, Kyle. The Big Five is going international. NCAA, if you would like to reimburse me, I will sit 28C. I'll pay for the Lorna Doone cookies on my credit card.
Me too, by the way. I would go.
I was just say, don't forget we pitched the idea. We should have put a trademark on that or something, Kyle.
Sign.
Pretty cool. Going international, Kyle. The Big Five is going over. The Pope is bringing the Big Five overseas. That's how I'm going to frame this. I refuse to think of anything else. But we're going international, Kyle.
Yeah. How could you frame it anywhere else? I mean, you did call it, although in the original you mentioned Loyola Chicago. Obviously, this is honestly it's a better situation with Notre Dame going, like you said, the largest Catholic alumni base in the country, going over to where the Pope stays, close to where the Pope stays, and hopefully we can get him there. And I mean, it's a cool thing. It's a really cool thing. So hopefully those students from both schools and both men's and women's will be able to enjoy that in September. It's the first game of the season, so it's a great way to start. All right, Cope. We are getting a little longer on time after the interview, after the quick hitter. So we're going to not go so in depth as we normally would on every single thing because we don't want to keep you guys here for a 2-hour episode. That's not fair to you. And also, you're not going to listen anyway. And we want you guys to listen. We want you to stay here and listen to us a little bit. So we're going to do a little bird's eye view of the last week or so since the last time we recorded. And each of us kind of make a few points, to wrap up this one. So, Cope, I will let you go first. What in the last week or so has been on your mind with how the Big Five has done in their respective conferences?
Yeah, I'm going to talk on Penn because I was there both Friday and Saturday. Big win over Columbia. Columbia was good. It was leading in this game for over 33 minutes. Looked like it was going to be a repeat of when they played up at Columbia. Columbia won a close 2-possession game. Penn took them down. AJ Levine, Kyle, 6 steals in this. He had 11 steals for the weekend. He had 6 steals in that game against Columbia. He made some big plays late. Obviously, Ethan Roberts brought him home with a couple big shots and some big free throws. But AJ Levine, Kyle, he got his hand on every ball. It felt like there's, I think, 21 seconds left, 19 seconds left. Columbia is trying to break the press. He deflects the ball out of bounds. And it's like, yeah, maybe only 1.5, 2 seconds comes off the clock, but it just showed you how active his hands were. Even getting steals, poking the ball away. He really wrecked that game defensively for Penn. And then the next night, I got to touch on this guy because I know we had the videos and Riley Frame put the videos out. Borussia Dortmund had a U15 team that I was talking to Jonathan Tandem over the Inquirer, and he said that they had toured Penn on Friday just so their kids could look at an American university, I guess kind of plant that seed if that's something that they wanted to pursue, if the immediate soccer stardom career that they wanted with the yellow and the black didn't work out. So they toured. They wanted to come back for a game. They did. Kyle Cornell shot 5 of 13 from the free throw line in the second half because these guys were just going ballistic. They were waving their shirts. They were being loud. They were cheering when there was missed free throws. It was such a cool little thing to see. But not only did you have your stars come out and your Ethan Roberts and your AJ Levine, score even more. AJ Levine had 16 in the game Saturday in the win against Cornell, but you saw the depth, Kyle. And when you play these back-to-backs and you play against a team like Cornell, so you play against a team that's going to throw bodies at you and play that fast on a back-to-back, it's important that you have that depth as well. And I saw that from Penn. 2 unsung heroes that, we talk about AJ Levine and Ethan Roberts and TJ Power and Michael Zanoni. 2 unsung heroes, Kyle. Lucas Luth was terrific, running the floor, beating the big down the floor. blocking shots, rebounding. He had a really good putback dunk in the Cornell game. He was really good. And on top of that, Kyle, how about Jay Jones going for a career high, knocking down free throws, playing a big role, seldom playing in the Friday night game and going for a career high on Saturday night in a really, really big win. And I talked to Fran McCaffrey after the game in the presser, and he just lauded the two of those guys. Lucas Lou didn't play the first game against Columbia, and he comes back and he has that game, and he had two really good games this past weekend. But just the togetherness of Penn, the fact that the bench is active every single game, defensive stop, rebound, basket, whatever. The bench is into it, and the guys that need to come in, they're not only ready to play, they keep working. They haven't packed it in. They're still wanting to be a part of the team, and when their number's called, go in there and make an impact. And with that, Kyle, not only this is a very critical weekend for Penn with a logjam in the middle of the Ivy League standings. According to Bart Torvik, a 97.6% chance to finish in that top four and to go to Ithaca for Ivy Madness. So I was at the Palestra for both games this weekend, a very critical one for Penn. They aced both tests in my eyes, Kyle. Tough game this weekend coming up against Yale on Saturday. But, man, two really big wins for them. They needed to separate two teams, especially, Kyle. They needed to separate themselves with being tied with Cornell and Columbia being one game back of them in terms of getting in the top four. So I saw the defensive improvement. I saw some unsung heroes step up. You saw the depth that Penn had. And at the end of the day, when their stars needed to make plays, they did. Really like what I'm seeing from them as they come together. Clearly, they're getting better as the year goes on, especially on that defensive side of the ball as well. We know about the offense that they have, but to come along like they did on that end was huge. So loved what I saw this weekend, Kyle, in a big weekend, not only to go 2-0, but to put themselves in position to break a 2-year stretch they haven't made Ivy Madness.
Yeah, two or 3 years. I think it's 3-year stretch, Cope. It was our first.
They made
3 years ago. They made it.
You said they made it. Yeah. They made it, and we were there at the Princeton
2023.
Game. I still don't think that was a charge on Nick Spinoza.
I still don't think that was a charge. No,
still thinking about it, but
I know.
And day, I guess.
Listen, they've definitely positioned themselves to be in a spot where they can get to Ivy Madness, and then you got to win 2 games to make the NCAA tournament. Very possible. So definitely something to keep an eye out for Penn. For me, I'm going to go to a couple teams, kind of going the other way. We mentioned one of them, or 3 teams. We mentioned one of them already, so I'm not really going to talk about them. In St. Joe's, obviously, they've lost their last 2. But for Drexel and for Temple, I want to touch on here. So I was at the Stony Brook Drexel game on Long Island on Monday night, and that was a one that they probably should have won that game, Cope. They were up 11 for, well into the first half. I think it was at the under 8 timeout. They were up 11, and then turnovers galore led Stony Brook back in this game. They went up 8 at one point in the second half. Drexel came back to take a 4-point lead late, and then Stony Brook with a 9-2 run to end the game to kind of steal it. And of course, it's tough to win on conference play, on the road in conference play, but that combined with their loss at home against Monmouth, and then they'd won against Elon and then lost at Campbell before that too. So 3 out of 4 in the loss column now for Drexel sees them tied for 5th in the CAA, which is a half game up in the win column on Campbell and Hampton. And Cope, you had a stat that you heard on the broadcast. You tweeted out during the Stony Brook game that 30 of the last 33 CAA champions have been in a top 4 position heading into the conference tournament. Obviously, Delaware was one of those a few years ago when they faced Villanova before they made the last Final Four and the last time a Big 5 teams made the tournament. But it's imperative that a team gets that double bye and finishes in the top 4. And they were in that position for a couple of weeks at least leading up to this point. Now they are not. Still time to get back there, but Cope, you look up at the calendar, it's February 17th right now. It'll be February 18th when this comes out. There's 3 weeks left in the season. Maybe not even for some teams. I mean, Drexel's last game is March 3rd at Hofstra. So that's coming up a lot sooner. There's 4 games left right now in Drexel's schedule. So they're going to need to hopefully at least go 2-2 in that, if not higher, to potentially get a top 4. But you're most likely looking at a 3-1 or a 4-0 stretch for them to be a top 4, which would be huge, like we said. So some work to do there, an unfortunate stretch for them. And then in a similar breath, Temple as well, though the American, I think, is somehow much more of a mess than the CAA. The CAA, there's a lot of teams in the middle, and for the American, it's largely the same. But Temple now has lost 3 of 5. One of those being the Charlotte loss at home, where they just absolutely let up a wide open layup to send that game to overtime, and then didn't pull it out. I know Gavin Griffiths wasn't playing in that game, but they'd won 2 after that, and then now have lost 2 in a row at Tulane, which they're a good team, and that's a tough road trip. So a little bit of grain of salt there, but you still, you'd like to see them win the games, of course. And then home against North Texas in a game that they definitely could have won their Cope. So now for Temple, when you look at the American standings, they are in 5th at 7-5, tied for 4th actually at 7-5 with Memphis. Charlotte also there as well, and then UAB is there at 7-6 too. So, I mean, really, it's South Florida and everybody else right now in that conference, but there's very much in the mix for top 4. But now, 2 teams that are kind of on a downswing, when just a couple weeks ago we were talking about them being 2 of the more consistent teams in the Big 5, which with the Big 5 as a whole this year, like we've talked about plenty of times, it's been a good year, probably the most success for all the teams that we've had since we started this podcast. Obviously, Villanova winning their 21st game tonight in overtime at Xavier, and they seem to be just about a lock for the NCAA tournament at this point. And we'll break the Big 5 streak here, so maybe that's not on us anymore, Cope, thankfully. Blood is not on our hands anymore. But other teams are in a position to also do this and win their conferences, and Temple and Drexel are among them. I still think they can be. They started to slow down a tiny bit. Same with St. Joe's, of course. Obviously, great to see Penn vault themselves back in the top 4 of Ivy, like you mentioned, and then LaSalle, unfortunately, not their season. But 2 teams I'm looking at here that hopefully they can flip the switch back to what it was a couple of weeks ago, even a week and a half ago or so, and get back into a top 4 position in each of those conferences and get an extra game of rest before, conference tournament play for them, and hopefully better matchups for them as well. So that's kind of my bird's eye view of what's going on in the Big 5 right now, Cope.
And Kyle, the Temple's right there. I'm going to be
right there
tomorrow night, or I guess if this recording comes out Wednesday, it'll be tonight. But they're a half game. Look, they want to get a top 2 spot for that bye into the semifinals.
Yeah.
South Florida, again, you mentioned they've kind of wrapped it up. They're 2 games up on everybody else. But if you're Temple, so you have UAB, who's a half game behind you, left on the schedule. You have Wichita State left on the schedule. You have Tulsa left on the schedule. You got to go to FAU. It's tough because there's road games mixed in here against Tulsa, Wichita State, FAU. But you get UAB at home. You have a winnable one against Rice, and then you have a chance to get some revenge here on Tulane. But it's hard games to end the stretch. There's no way around it, because it's teams that they're directly jockeying for position with to get that. Basically, that they're fighting for one spot. They're fighting for that one spot behind South Florida. It's still right in front of them. The Tulane was look. It was a bad loss. There's no denying that. But the North Texas one as well. God, they're up 12 in the second half. Yeah. They just got out physical. I felt they got out tough. And it was a vintage North Texas performance. You probably could have, if Daniel Robinson probably could have just worn like a Halloween costume to the point where you would have not even known who he was, and it just would have been like, yeah, it doesn't really matter who's on that sideline. They played like a North Texas team to me. Mucked it up, win a game in the 70s. It was ugly. They never were phased by being down 12 when Temple was seemingly making everything. But they've blown a couple of these, Kyle. And it's nobody's fault but their own if they don't get a top 2 seed. But still, regardless, Kyle, here we are, the middle of February, where every single game matters a ton, and they're still right there. Everything they want with that top 2 spot is still right in front of them. Which, oh, by the way, if you do get a top 2 spot and you are to win that game, you wouldn't have to potentially see South Florida, who they've already beaten, until you get to the American Conference Championship game.
Yeah.
The last 2 games have not been good, but everything is still right in front of them.
And the same goes for Drexel too. But yeah, I mean, it's right there, like you said. And in the American especially, 2nd through 10th is separated by 2 games.
Crazy.
Now, I know for some teams there's only 4 or 5 games left on their schedule, so, that gets kind of compacted a little bit. But still, the fact that there's only 2 games that separate 2nd through 10th in the American is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and that makes it even the more important. We're talking so much about, they could be as high as this. what could they be as low as if they start dropping games to teams that are jumbled up in the mix? You know, you lose.
They could be right on that cut line, Coach.
Who's a half game behind? Isn't that crazy though? We haven't even thought about that this year. We haven't even thought about the fact that that could be a possibility that they miss the tournament. It's crazy. I don't think they will, but it's crazy that we're even, that's even a discussion. Just these standings are a mess.
Yeah,
they are jammed up even more than the CAAs.
I was going to say for the CAA, it's third through ninth is separated by 2.5 games.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, College. They got to play top 4 seeds. Got to play 3 games. That's what makes that so important. Is you got to play 3 games in 3 days to win it. I mean, they're the freshest playing 3 days in 3 days, which is crazy. But it's a lot to ask.
It's a lot
to be have to play 4 or 5 games in as many days.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's both conferences there are jumbled up. It will be imperative for both teams to obviously, I mean, this goes without saying, obviously, but get as high of a seed as you can because it's going to benefit you. Hopefully, once you get to, later in conference tournament play. Now, of course, Drexel was a 2 seed a couple years ago, lost to Stony Brook in the quarterfinals. And Amari Williams was last year. I know he got hurt in that game. That was probably the Drexel team that very well could have made and should have made that tournament. The NCAA tournament, that is. I mean, who was it that year? Was it UNCW that made it?
What, the year that Drexel lost?
I think it was.
No, I think that was the last. I think that was Kelsey's last hurrah.
Yes, it was. Yeah, Charleston. It was Charleston that year, but still, it's been those 2 teams for the last little bit here. So hopefully Drexel can knock them off. Hopefully Temple can knock off South Florida or Tulane or Tulsa. And in the American tournament, we'll see. But hopefully, if they can even get up to that top 2, like you said, Cope, with the way that the format's changed this year and the bracket, they can go right to the semifinal. So important. All right, Cope. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
All good for me. It's crazy how time is flying by. But got a game tomorrow. It'll be at UAB Temple, and then right after that, Kyle, Saturday. Not right after. I get a couple of days rest because I was at 5 games in 5 days last week. Loyola Chicago and St. Joe's at noon on Saturday. Ideally, I'll be down at Xfinity Mobile Arena for UConn and Villanova at 5:30 that same day. So getting down to it, Kyle. I'm starting to think about if I'm going to hit any conference tournaments, but we're at the best time of the year. We're at the best time of the year for sure. We're literally coming down the home stretch. I mean, we got a week and a half until March.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me too. I mean, we're almost there, Cope. Not that we want to wish away the regular season of the college basketball season. Obviously, it's what we love doing and we love talking about. But once it hits conference tournaments, it's the most exciting time of the year, hands down. So, yeah. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Of course, we very much appreciate your love and support always. And we'll be looking forward to some more of that as we get into conference play and tournament play, like we mentioned as well. But if you want to find our stuff, make sure you go to our audio-only versions on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously, if you're seeing us right now, we're on YouTube, so make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And social media at Big 5 Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And yeah, we appreciate you guys. Lot more to come from all these teams. So we're looking forward to riding the wave here. We'll see you next time.